Hey everyone, welcome to this video. I'm Anya Esma and today we are looking like a corpse because I am sick, but I am going to film this video. God help me if I don't, because I've been on a roll with these witchy holidays. I have posted journaling prompts for every witchy holiday since Imbolc this year, and I'm not going to stop now. If you watch this at the time of upload, I am completely aware that Samhain is kind of over, but we are still doing this. We are in this together for the sake of continuation, so let's just roll with it. I've been sick these past few days. I have had issues with my phone. It has not been easy, but we are still going to do this, and fittingly, of course, the Samhain journaling prompts are going to be about shadow work. So we are going to talk about some shadow work basics today, what shadow work is, what it tries to accomplish, and I'm also going to give you some journaling prompts to work with. So since I have been posting these journaling prompts since Imbolc, I also have Beltane journaling prompts. If you are in the Southern Hemisphere, you are probably celebrating Beltane right now, not Samhain, so I'm going to link that video below. I literally typed this all out at 3 a.m. in the morning. I woke up and I had this burst of energy, this burst of inspiration, while also being a little bit feverish. So to start things out, I want to talk about what shadow work is, because a lot of people always wonder, always ask me. It's a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot in the spiritual community, in the self-development community, in the psychology community, and a lot of people still don't know what shadow work is and how you can get started in it. So let's talk about that. Quick side note, even if you are experienced in shadow work, these prompts will probably be good for you because you never really get over the basics with shadow work. Of course, there's deeper stuff you can work on, but the basic methods are always going to be helpful to integrate more shadows if you are already advanced. So yes, I'm going to talk about integration later, so let's just take it one step at a time. So shadow work is a concept based on the shadow as it was described by Carl Gustav Jung, who was a psychologist that was a student of Sigmund Freud's, but took Freud's ideas and developed them further in a more spiritual way, in a way that feels a little more wholesome, as we would say nowadays. So what is the shadow? I'm going to simplify this a little bit for the sake of simplifying it. Oh God. So what is the shadow? So what is the shadow? Essentially, to simplify it, the shadow is made up of those parts of ourselves that we suppressed, often as children, because they did not get us love. Now, as human beings, we are wired to be social animals. We are wired to live in a group and survive if we are in a group better than if we are on our own. That is why we are made up to be in compliance with the rules of a society or of a group that we are a part of. That essentially means that when we notice that something does not get us loved or something gets us expelled from that group that we want to be a part of, we try to suppress that part of ourselves so that we are always in alignment with the group's needs and not necessarily with our own needs or our authentic personality or authentic needs. So an example of this would be, to make this more understandable for you, a mother who all her life was never allowed to communicate her needs in her family, her whole friend group. In her life, she was never allowed to speak up about what she actually needs. Now, if that mother has a daughter and she is not aware of this issue within herself, chances are that she will educate her daughter and help her daughter grow up in the same way, unfortunately, which means that she will suppress her daughter's needs so that her daughter learns to suppress them herself. So when her daughter says that she needs something, that she wants something, her mother says possibly that she doesn't deserve it, or that she just doesn't take it seriously. She says that, oh, it's not that important, even though it feels important to the daughter. And in this way, we learn very quickly to suppress certain things so that we gel very nicely with our parents, with society around us. And all of those parts that we suppress is going to be our shadow. That is what our shadow landscape will be made up of. For me, for example, one person in my family, whenever I asked a question, would call me stupid and would be sort of demeaning towards me whenever I was curious about something, which means that curiosity was a major part of my shadow. I did not dare ask questions. Still today, sometimes I feel uncomfortable with asking questions, and I get uncomfortable when other people ask questions in order to understand things more fully. And I have this thing where I try to always seem like I get everything the first time without asking questions. And the fact that I'm aware of it helps a lot, and I have resolved a lot of those issues, but it is still a part of my shadow in certain parts. And I haven't integrated it fully, that idea that I can be curious, I am allowed to ask questions. So that's another example. Another very common one is that we tell children not to cry, for example, or we tell them to stop crying because there's no reason to. We are essentially invalidating their feelings about certain situations because we think their feelings are unnecessary and we do not respect them because they are only children. That is also something that will very quickly create a huge shadow within children that gets suppressed. This can also develop into a full-blown inability to pay attention to your own needs as a child and as a grown-up as well. So there's some really big issues with invalidating children's feelings or laughing at them when they cry. Even though it's hard sometimes because they are so cute, but still we have to take them seriously. We have to respect their feelings as we would respect the feelings of other grown-ups. So to sum it up again, whatever we are shamed for, whatever we are unloved for, those are the things that are going to go straight into the shadow in order to make us work within a group. So this is going to be a huge complex. Most of us aren't going to have like one shadow subject or two, but literally hundreds. There's always something else to work on, trust me. And it is often also the basis for our security mechanisms. If we feel resistant to certain things, if we don't like certain people, often that has to do with our shadow. For me, for example, to go back to the example I used earlier, I still sometimes, not necessarily today, but I used to have major issues with people who were curious and who were asking questions because I was like, why are they doing that? Why do they think that's okay? And it took me a long time to realize that the reason I feel like that is because I myself don't think it's okay for me to ask questions because I was degraded for asking questions when I was a child. There you go. So that is basically my best example of shadow work that I have. So that means when we are uncomfortable, when we are ashamed, when we are embarrassed, when we are angry, those are the best moments to do shadow work and to dive into why we feel these feelings. Now, what is the goal of shadow work? Let's talk about that. The goal of shadow work is essentially to integrate those parts of ourselves that have not gotten enough attention. That part of me that was curious, that did not get loved, that got pushed to the side. Wait, how do you say that? Pushed to the sidelines, that's the phrase. Pushed to the sidelines by one member of my family. That part of myself is unloved, in the shadow, insecure. And now it is my task to get it out of there, to teach myself that it is okay to be curious, that it is okay to ask questions. And that is a very powerful healing journey that we can go on. Once we recognize and acknowledge a shadow, that is when we can really start to work on it and start to integrate it into our personality. A lot of people also struggle with self-confidence because they weren't praised as children, they weren't respected as children, their needs weren't met as children. So you have no self-confidence, you have no healthy concept of, I need this, so I deserve it. And this concept of deserving is something that a lot of people struggle with. And integrating that into your personality, integrating that knowledge that you do deserve certain things, even though your parents made you feel like you didn't, that is also a good example of what integration means in shadow work. But I don't want to go too deep with all of this right now, so let us just dive into the journaling prompts. If you want to hear more about this, feel free to let me know in the comments. I know shadow work is a huge topic that a lot of people are always interested in, so if you want to hear more, let me know, and I will share more stories about my own shadow work and tell you how you can get started in it. But these journaling prompts are a pretty good starting point in my personal opinion. As always, with these prompts, I recommend using tarot or another tool of divination because it just helps you dip into those unconscious parts of your mind. It gives you inspiration. You're not just swimming unsure of what these questions mean, what your answers could be, but rather you have an idea, you have a card that you can relate to. But of course, you don't have to. What I recommend is you can either draw cards alongside me as I am speaking. You can also write down your first thoughts as I am speaking. As you hear me say these questions, you may want to write down what the first thing is that comes to your mind. Okay, there's a fly in front of my face, because first thoughts are very valuable. Or you can also just do this later in a calmer atmosphere and just take your time, work with these journaling prompts. Now remember, it's always a good time to shadow work. This isn't just a Samhain, Halloween thing. This is something you can do year round, all the time. But this is just a good time to connect with the subconscious. This is a good time to go beyond the conscious mind. So it is a good time of year for these sorts of explorations, but always is a good time if you're feeling stable enough and if you're feeling ready to deal with certain difficult topics in your life, of course. So let us start. Oh, God. So let's start. The first prompt is, what area of your life needs shadow work right now? Starting out with a very basic question here. So what you can do here is draw a card, see how you relate to it, think of a situation that it could relate to, look at what the people are doing in the card, or even just what you thought of first when I said these words. Think of a situation that annoyed you, that made you feel ashamed, that made you feel undervalued, angry, scared, disappointed, sad. All of these emotions can be starting points for shadow work. So if there were situations lately in which you felt like that, in which you felt defensive maybe, think about what area of your life it relates to essentially. If something is coming to your mind right now, if a situation is coming to your mind, stop the video and write it down so that you have your starting point. That is the important thing, because this card is essentially the starting point. It's a situation that you can work from, and it's kind of a representation of the shadow that we are trying to work with here. The second prompt is, what is the core, the real core of this reaction that you had, of this situation that you were in? And why did you feel this way about this situation? This is not a very clear prompt. It's going to depend on the situation, but try to think about the core of what happened. Try to think about what it reminded you of. Maybe it reminded you of interactions with your siblings, with your parents, with your friends in elementary school. What is the underlying message of this thing that happened, of this situation that you want to work on? The third prompt is, in what other areas does this shadow show itself, or this issue that you are struggling with? This question or this prompt is so that you can fully acknowledge how far this shadow has gone and how far it has influenced your life and what actual effect it has on your life. So if someone said your work isn't good enough, for example, Did that spread into other areas? Did you suddenly doubt your whole self-confidence? Did you doubt your whole ability just because someone criticized one piece of work that you did? If that is the case, just in this example, chances are that it kind of hit a sore spot. It's not just about you drawing a bad picture for a client, writing a bad text for a client, or doing something bad at your job. But it is about something much deeper. It is about you not entirely trusting yourself and being thrown off by this. Some people, if they have a healthy self-confidence, they'll just be like, oh, well, I fucked up this one thing that I did. Someone told me I fucked it up, but that's okay. I'm generally capable. If you don't have this trust that you are generally capable, it's going to spread in your life a little bit. If someone criticizes you, it's going to spread to other areas. So this card or this prompt is going to represent how the shadow has been spreading to other areas of your life, so that we can see that it's not just about this specific situation, it's actually about what underlies it and how it affects the rest of your life. So now that we have gotten to know the shadow a bit better, we are going to go to the fourth prompt, which is, how can you start integrating this shadow? We have acknowledged it, we have seen how it affects us. Take your time with this process, by the way. Sometimes maybe you can't answer all of these questions at once. So I spoke about integration earlier, and that's what this question is about. Essentially, this will be about getting out of your comfort zone and seeing how you can coax out this shadowy part of yourself into the light of day in a way. So this underrepresented part of you, maybe the part that doesn't want to communicate your needs, that doesn't want to be honest about your emotions, that wants to avoid conflict at any cost, the part of you that doesn't want to be curious, that doesn't want to ask questions because they're afraid of being called stupid. That's me. Those parts of you, how can you integrate those parts and how can you basically give them space in your life? For me, of course, that meant I had to start asking questions. I had to push myself to ask questions and to not care whether people would think I'm stupid. Big surprise, nobody thought I was stupid. Unreasonable fear. That's kind of a thing with shadow work. Fear is such a big part of it. So anyways, the fourth prompt, how can you start integrating the shadow? In this case, if you're using tarot, maybe look at the suit of it. Look at what suit the card is, look at what number the card is, see what element is associated with it, so that you can really hone in on what this card might be helping you to start doing. Look at what the people are doing in the card. Is it just one person? Is it two people? Depending on that, it may be telling you, hey, you have to speak to other people more, or you have to do some quiet reflection. All of this is going to be contained in the card, so trust in that. So what we have done with these journaling prompts so far is we have seen what the shadow is by looking at a situation that we were struggling with. Then we have looked at what the underlying issue might be in our childhood or even just a few years ago. Then we moved on to see and acknowledge how it has affected our life and what areas of our life it has affected. And we have seen how we can integrate it more and how we can go out of our comfort zone. So now the fifth and final prompt is going to be the big motivator. It's going to be what our life would look like if we integrate this shadow. A vision of how your life is when you have healed this, when you have integrated this shadow. So this is really the best motivation, just a vision of what it's like if you have brought peace to that part of yourself, if you have integrated it in your life and you feel better about it. If you want more journaling prompts, I also have a Patreon where you can get fresh, awesome prompts. This month is going to be about ancestral healing, but you instantly unlock all of the journaling prompts if you become a patron. So I will put a link to that below, and it also supports this channel, which I appreciate very, very greatly. I think that's about it. If you liked this, please like the video. If you want to, you can subscribe, dwell in my domain a little longer, look around, get ready for more journaling prompts for the witchy holidays, and I appreciate so much that you're here. Let me know how your shadow work goes. It's not always easy, it's not always a clear path. Afterwards, we can usually talk about it in a very clear way, but until then, it's hard sometimes. So I wish you best of luck on that convoluted path, and I hope that you have the best of days, the best of weeks, and I will see you very, very soon. Thank you.